Everybody to the Tea with Ms McGill show, fueled by Blue Line Brews. It is Puka, it is Reed Larson. It is a very special guest that we're going to get to in just a second, but just a few words first. So Blue Line Brews, I said a new partner with us. We appreciate them coming on board. BlueLineBrews.com, BlueLineBrews.com, a couple of bags that are right behind us. Not only do they have a real tasty line of coffee, they also support the men in blue, the women in blue, law enforcement. 10% of the profits from BlueLineBrews.com go to families of fallen officers from the line of duty. So 10% of the profits go right back to families of officers who have fallen in the line of duty. So go to BlueLineBrews.com, check out the tasty coffee, or like I said, as always, you can just scroll down into the show notes and get everything you need there. Just click right on over to the website. A couple more housekeeping items. If you're a podcaster and you've been listening to us for the last 8 months, I guess it's been, Reed, you can go to YouTube or Facebook and find us there now. You won't find us under Tea with Ms McGill. You'll find us under Goat Sports. So search Goat Sports at YouTube, Goat Sports at Facebook, or again, scroll down, just click on the link and bring you over. You can actually see what we're doing. And if you've been a long time, or excuse me, a short timer where you've come on board just with Facebook or just with YouTube more recently, because we have had a lot of you subscribing more recently, if you want to hear what Reed and I have been up to for the last 7-8 months, go to the favorite place that you podcast and search there, Tea with Ms McGill Show, Tea with Ms McGill Show. It'll pop up, and like I said, you can listen to everything we've been up to for the last several months. So
yeah, Goat Sports Media or Goat Sports, you've got Goat Sports on Facebook, and typically then I will share anything from my Twitter page out there as well.
yeah, right. Yeah, give them your Twitter handle.
Yeah, Twitter handle is Reed A. Larson.
Okay, perfect. So we got that. So on to our very special guest. You want to do the intro, Reed?
Well, introduction here for Mr. Mike Antonovich. Anton is well known back to the days of the finest greenway of Coleraine hockey teams that started the tradition over, I like to say, just 6 miles east of here in Grand Rapids. But that's where that big tradition started, and that big rivalry between Grand Rapids and Greenway. And it's always great to have good conversations with Mike. But Anton in the building here tonight to talk with us a little bit about, we just like to dig into his wisdom. So more about it. Go ahead, Roger, fire away with some questions.
Absolute legend up here, and not only in our range, but the whole state of Minnesota. So why don't you, like I said, we do have a lot of young, even, Bantams, Pee-wees, high school age kids. Why don't you just give them just a 1-minute version of Mike Antonovich as you remember it? Maybe even start with, I'm sure you outdoor rinks as a kid, right? You started?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a small town, Calumet, Minnesota. A lot of people familiar with it on the range and stuff. Played outdoor hockey all the way through. They built a rink in Coleraine in 1962, and we were lucky enough to play in there on the weekends. We thought that was a big treat, but although it wasn't, because nobody could skate on the ice there. It was too good. It was too smooth, and we didn't have any way to sharpen our skates. So actually, we struggled when we went to the rink there, but. Ended up playing there 3 more years, and they did get artificial ice in '69. So, it was built by all the people in these small towns. And people don't realize that the land was donated. The building was built by volunteer labor and stuff. So really that building, and even today, it's solid as a rock, and people should be proud of that they get a chance to play in that old rink.
Absolutely. Lots of tradition there.
A lot of tradition. Yeah.
And then you moved on from high school.
Well, I was lucky enough. I got a scholarship to the University of Minnesota. At that time, you really didn't have any alternatives. Either you're going to college or your hockey career was with the senior teams that were scattered throughout the range. So fortunate for me, I ended up at Minnesota. I played 2 years at Minnesota. Not really one of the greatest students. So I had an offer to play pro hockey in my junior year, and decided that if somebody was going to pay me to play a game like hockey, I might as well do it. So that opportunity was there. I took it, and the rest was history. So for me, it was, I guess, at the right time and the right place. So
sure.
Where was that first place that you signed your contract to start your pro career?
Well, I don't know if any of the young guys are familiar, but the WHA started it in 72, and that's where the opportunity came for a lot of United States hockey players at that time, and I was one of them. I signed with the Minnesota Fighting Saints, and played there the whole time. The 8 years they were there, 7 off and on, they had folded and came back and played in the league from the beginning to the end. Played in the NHL a little bit with the North Stars in the 70s. Then later on played in Hartford and spent a little time in New Jersey at the end of my career. So well-traveled, but if you ask me if I had fun, I'd have to say, yeah, I had a lot of fun. So it was an opportunity, and it was at that time, if you were a Minnesota kid or a US hockey player, there weren't many opportunities, and the league opened that up. And then now, of course, since the 1980 Olympics, it's just taken off. These American kids are getting all kinds of opportunities. So it's been fun to watch the evolution from back in the late 60s all the way up into the the 2000s. It's amazing. So for me, it's been a good ride. It's been a lot of fun, but really this is home. High school hockey is where I spend a lot of time, and I just enjoy it. For me, I don't know, it's probably been the most important thing in my life, because with the state tournament, with watching all these kids throughout the years, scouting and stuff. So for me, it's been a wonderful ride.
Awesome.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the area, and it's kind of cool that you throw the piece in there about when the snake pit got built back in the 60s. All of us Rapids guys always just call it the snake pit because it's such a difficult place to play. I mean, you go there as the away team, you're already, when you walk into that building, in your mind, you're down 2-0 already when you walk into that building, because of the tradition that's there, because of how tight you are in the building, and the tradition that hangs in the rafters, and the ghosts that float out in the rafters and in the bleachers there. But talk about what it was like to play at Greenway in the late 60s and be part of that start of where that tradition started.
I think it started even before that, because when we were playing outdoors and stuff, everybody wanted to play for Greenway High School. That was your goal. That was your first goal. So everybody, when you got there, it was like, wow, and I mean, at that time, it was a really big deal. And to get there and to be on a championship team the first year, you couldn't wrote a better script. And where we were good. We had a good team. We were solid, and then came back the next year, won again.
Yeah.
I mean, and great players, played with great players. We had great teams that all along the range, all the way from Rapids all the way to Ely. Everybody was solid. You didn't have too many nights off. And then fortunate again to go back in '69. I still feel that today. The only game we lost in the state tournament was in the opening round in '69. We ended up in consolation. But
So you lost one game that year?
One game in the tournament.
Oh, in the tournament.
In those 3 years. And I'll tell you what, I still remember like it was yesterday. That's the only thing I can clearly remember. It's still a disappointment to most of us that played on that team, and to the city and everything, because we were good. We were good at that time, but there were a lot of good players on the range at that time. Rapids was a little bit down at that time, and then after that little run Greenway had, then Rapids started to come. So it kind of moved around. Hibbing was always tough, so it was a tough game every night for us, and you had to have the breaks, because hockey. I mean, if you don't get any breaks, and you got some breaks, and it was one of those things that. Like now, if I go to the state tournament, everything comes rushing back. That's why it's so much fun, and to watch these kids get an opportunity to do that. That's just frosting on the cake as far as I'm concerned. To me, I mean, it was such a big part of my career and my life. I got a lot of respect for hockey players.
Well, they're the best. The best brotherhood you could ask for is the hockey people.
Hockey is a fraternity, and that's one of the things that doesn't change over the generations and over the time, is that I think there's a love for the guys you play with and the community that you play for and the school that you play for. Awesome that you mentioned that about every little kid wanting to play for Greenway High School, and how they all look up to you and think, I want to wear that jersey someday. I want to be able to skate out on that rink someday. And I don't care what town you're in, across the range, across northern Minnesota. I think everybody feels the same way. But that's kind of where all of that started. Awesome stuff. Roger?
Well, so like you said, he moved on from Greenway. He played for the Golden Gophers, as we can see. And one of his line mates is another name. Not only is Mike Antonovich a name that's synonymous with hockey, but Dean Blaze was one of his line mates. Is totally synonymous with hockey. So what can you tell us about playing with him, or just what kind of a guy he is? Or I think you guys were golfing a couple of weeks ago, weren't you?
Yeah, we golfed up in March.
Yeah. A little bird told me that. Yeah.
Well, the real story with me and Dino is we didn't like each other.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Well, he's from the Falls, right?
Yeah, I suppose big round. Yeah.
Yeah.
International Falls, we didn't like very much. And they were good at that time because, I mean, they were in a state tournament, I think in '68, I think they won Region 7. We went in the back door that year. But Dino was a big part of that team. Well, we didn't like him. And of course, we had a little bit of a fiasco in Colorado one night.
That never happens.
So, and Dino I still Dino, I'm probably the only guy that ever took a whack at him. Right? So we ended up going to the U together. And I got to tell you a quick story. When Glenn Sonmore brought us in the fall for fall hockey just before our freshman year. Well, he didn't tell me Dean Blaze was coming to his house too. Well, he didn't tell Dino that either. So when Dino walked in the house, I walked out. So, and then Sonmore got the bright idea that we'd be good roommates together at college. So we ended up being roommates and line mates, and actually, of course, bantered back and forth for a couple of years because we still had a little bit of iron range in us, but over the years, been a good friend. A lot of success Dino's had because of an injury when he was playing in the minor leagues, so he had to go another route, and ended up as a coach, and I think he did one heck of a job, and he just got inducted into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. So you go different ways, and you really don't know where you're going to end up, and great for Dino. I just saw him; he's doing super. All we do is laugh. We laugh about the days we hated each other, compete against each other and with each other. So, it's one of those things, hockey. I mean, it's been 50 years, and that's an amazing thing, I think. And you guys are the same thing. The people you meet throughout the years, there's always somebody special, and hockey's given me that. And Dino's one of them.
That's pretty awesome. It's cool that we just talked about that at the beginning too. Greenway was on the rise in the 60s. The Falls was in and out in the 60s. And then Grand Rapids kind of started to hit their high in the early 70s when Gus Henderson took the program over here, and it started to go in the right direction. They didn't see their first state championship until 75, 76. But, that's back in the day of the Iron Range and how it kind of took over hockey. Whether that be from Grand Rapids all the way over to Eveleth and up to International Falls. But talk about that old time Iron Range hockey a little bit more, about what you saw night in and night out. If it was Greenway versus Hibbing, if it was Greenway versus Grand Rapids or the Falls, those rivalries, how were those back in the 60s?
Well, we didn't go to Grand Rapids because we didn't like Grand Rapids. And they didn't like us. So, I mean, and Hibbing the same way. Nobody associated. We didn't know who Polish was from Hibbing or Rothstein was from here. Nobody cared because nobody liked them. And nobody cared who Antonovich or Pluso or Geyer or Trombley was from Coleraine because we didn't like each other. We didn't travel around being best buddies. So every night we played hard, and the buildings were full. Yeah. But one thing about the Iron Range and hockey is in the 60s when I played, and I can go back to being a fan, is the fans appreciated good hockey. The people and watching the games, and I think as a hockey player, if you went to another city in the summer and stuff, they just treated you like one of your own. So compete like heck, fight like dogs. At the end of the day, we're all from the range, and we're all, whoever went to the state tournament competed, whoever we wanted them to win. So it's been like that, I think, since I can remember, and I still think that's one of the outstanding things about this state is if there's a northern team in there, northern people root for northern Minnesota.
Oh,
it doesn't care if they're Roseau or Moorhead, and I think that's the unique part of it. I think it's great. And I mean, the cities are good, and all those teams have changed over the years, but yet I still think that camaraderie in the northern part of the state is still there, and it's, you know, it's not like it used to be, but the whole hockey world's changed. But I'll tell you what, it was a blast. Every night was full and every night was a battle, so we had a lot of fun.
Sounds like you sure did, yeah. So I got to sneak in a quick advertisement here, people. If you're looking for a job, or your brother-in-law needs a job, or your son-in-law needs a job, L&M Radiator, right in Hibbing, Minnesota is looking. Mesabi.com. Again, I'll have the link in the show notes. mesabi.com. They need to fill over 30 positions yesterday. So if you're looking for a job, or someone's been complaining to you that they need a job, just jump over to mesabi.com. There's all kinds of information right in the upper right-hand corner. Say apply now. You get there, and it'll give you a listing of all the jobs available. All right, I want to talk to you. So you're talking about packed buildings. So I'm gonna fast forward because I know we're gonna be all over in this interview, people. Ree's got scouting questions. But I mentioned this before. So in the early '90s, there was the American Hockey Association, I believe it was called.
Yeah, the
With
AHA.
Minnesota, yeah, the AHA. So we're fast forwarding to the early '90s now. Hibbing has a semi-pro team it didn't even make it quite a year, and you know, I used to go to some of the games. All of a sudden, one day we're in school and we get this hall pass and says, you're pulled out of school. The hockey coach wants you at the Memorial Building. And it's like 11 in the afternoon. We show up there and there's a team from Russia practicing in the middle of the day. We're like, well, this is pretty cool. And they all had to go, I don't know if you were at that, remember they had to go across the blue line, hit the crossbar, or they had to do it again. They couldn't leave the ice. We're like, holy cow. So they're playing tonight against the Minnesota Iron Rangers, they were called. So this is great. So we go to the game, place is packed. And in the starting lineup, there comes a name, I think on defense, Mike Antonovich. I'm like, I look at the rest, he's the coach. Well, I guess he's player coach Reggie Dunlop tonight. So I was going to ask you what you remember from the league, what you remember from that team, and maybe even what you remember from that night playing against, they dubbed them the Russian Red Army. I don't know, I mean, they're pretty talented.
Well, they did have a good team, but when the league started, it was a couple of guys got together. They wanted to start a semi-pro team league. I think they have teams in St. Paul, Hibbing, and Fargo, Green Bay and stuff. And they tried to put it together. They put it together fast. And like you said, it didn't last very long, but it gave an opportunity some more kids to play hockey beyond where they were playing in college and stuff. And I think, I don't know what they were paying at that time, $300 or $400 a week. And, you know, it was just another dream to follow for some kids, and who knows where it would have taken them, but it didn't last long enough. And then they scheduled the Russian game.
They made money that night.
Yeah.
Or 2 nights. They played
Yeah.
back to back. Yeah.
But yeah, the funny thing was, we didn't have a whole lot of players that night, so I had to play.
You strapped them on, player coach.
I hadn't played since I retired, so for me, it was just like, oh my God. I ran into a couple of those guys. They were pretty strong. But it was fun, and those guys that played on that team in Hibbing were good kids. And I felt bad when it folded because we couldn't do anything about it. We didn't have any money, could hardly get them out of town. Tried to help a few of them and stuff, but it was a disappointment to a lot of people and to the city of Hibbing too, because a lot of things were left undone there, and that was a sad part. But that's just another page in the days and in your life, right? You just go forward and go from there. I figured that was an opportunity for me to coach, which I really like coaching, really. But playing at 40 wasn't much fun. So
did your son Jeff come to the rink and critique you that night?
No.
You didn't allow him?
But I went down and played with him. I played with him in Quad City.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
So I did it. I tried to do it one more time.
Well, that's good. So after successful high school, college, professional playing career, you worked your way into midlife. It sounds like a little coaching, but then got into some scouting. Scouting in the NHL for how many years now, Mike?
35, I think.
35 years scouting in the NHL. Bumped from a couple of different teams, right?
Yeah, started with actually Central Scouting part-time, and worked with Winnipeg, and then ended up in St. Louis for the longest in 20 years. And then now I'm doing some part-time stuff in Minnesota yet with Columbus. So for me, that fits perfect with my lifestyle. I get to watch these Minnesota kids, and I get to critique them, and actually I get to know a lot of them.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've met a lot of these kids. So that's the nice part of the job. You know, I don't go with my little black book and my little black jacket. I just go to the games like I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the games, and I've been a lucky guy. I mean, if anybody would tell me that I would just have this 30 or 40-year deal with hockey and somebody paying me to do this, I would have said you're crazy. But you know, it worked out that way. I've been lucky. I've met a lot of great people. I've met a lot of great kids, and I mean, I still meet great kids. So I mean, I'm pretty fortunate, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I think about the scouting piece and just what you said. You know, someone going to pay you to sit and watch hockey and evaluate players and send reports back and just be a fan while you're there. Sounds like a dream job. I've always had in the back of my mind at some point in time, I'd really love to be a scout at a higher level. Tough to get into it unless you play in the NHL, unless you know some people. But one of the things I think about is what you evaluate. And good question for a scout that's been there for many years. For the listeners, what things do you evaluate when you're watching a high school player? Skill wise, and then what types of character things are you looking for in that job?
Well, I think everybody's got their own little niche in what they look for and stuff. And I look for skill. And by skill, I mean, do you move the puck? Can do you see the ice? Do you have any finesse? But I think really the biggest thing is compete. I like kids that come to the rink and play hard every night. They compete. They want to be the best player. They want the puck. They do what it takes to win. I think those traits are very, very important. You have to have skill. Skating now is a big deal. I mean, that's critical that you have to be able to skate. But I still think character and commitment to the game is the key thing. And you can see it on the ice. I think that's where I try to determine what I see is what I believe. Off the ice, he may not work as hard as Joe over there in the weight room, but on the ice, that's what he is, and that's what he wants to do. So over the years, I've been a skill guy. I've been a compete guy and a committed guy. I talk to people around the rink. I talk to coaches. I don't always believe the coaches because sometimes they like the guy a lot and they want to
Well, they're going to campaign for all sorts of things.
So yep. But over the years, I just tried to make my own mind up on players, and of course, you're wrong a lot of times. If everybody thinks we're right all the time, they've been, they're in the wrong place because there's been a lot of players you've missed on, but there's a lot of players you can hit on too. And say I just use Minnesota guys as examples, and the guys that come out of here have been great players. I mean, you can go all the way back. I can go all the way back to the Roloffs and all those guys that came out of here and Nielsen's and Minnesota Chorskys. All these guys are, they're all great players. And I got to watch them. And I got to, and somebody paid me to watch them. So, and I get to say hello to them down the road now. Even now, because I met them through the years, and I think that's important too. But the number one key to finding out if he's a good guy or not, and people laugh at me for this, I'm going to tell you where I go. I go to the girls.
100%. Absolutely. How does he treat the young ladies?
And it's amazing how right on they are. It's amazing. And I tell people that, and they go, well, no. I said, I'm just telling you. And they're most of the time they're dead on.
Yeah.
And these kids. So I mean, if parents and kids that are playing hockey and stuff, if I'm in the building, that's where I'm going to go. But it's a combination of things, all those things together. But actually, it's the kid, and you want a good kid, you want a good citizen, you want not everybody's perfect. You got to get past that because not everybody's perfect. I mean, if you never get off the railroad track, hey, we all have been off the track.
Absolutely.
So you got to put that in perspective too. And I just think that you feel comfortable with what you believe and how the guy plays, and you'd like to have him on your team. That's the guy that's what you're looking for. Whether, I'll use an example right today. The kid in Grand Rapids, Jack Perk. I mean, I don't know if I can punch any holes in his game, at a high school level. He's the best player in the state of Minnesota. He might be in the top 10 in the world. I haven't seen all those people, but I'll tell you what, he's got ability like no one else has. Skating, finesse, skill, compete, good team player. I mean, he comes back off those are the kind of people that, and this is me, that I think are your future as an organization.
Absolutely. Well, and I think somebody too, just going back what you said, I think somebody can look at him in the first, end of the first round, beginning of the second round this year, thinking I'm going to build my organization around a player like that, because I think, and it's just my, little bit of experience and, my opinion from a guy that's never scouted the NHL before, but I'd be real disappointed if I didn't see him go somewhere between, 25 and 45 in the draft overall. I think somebody can pick up a really, really good player and build their organization around him for the next how many years.
Oh, I think the same thing. And as far as hockey goes, and you don't need to put scouts on a pedestal, because anybody who watches hockey, any hockey people can pick out guys like this and pick out their players. And it's just my job. That's just my job. I dig a little deeper than most people, but going to the rink and seeing guys like that play, I mean, the hardest thing to do is find somebody in the 5th or 6th round that's going to compete for a job down the road. And those are the kind of guys that I really enjoy looking at.
You watch the progression. It's fun to watch them progress, right?
So yeah, I mean, so there's different levels to watch too. And Pert just happens to be, I mean, Brock Nelson.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson went 30th overall. If they did the draft tomorrow, he'd probably go in the top 15.
Yeah.
But the only reason, there's a couple of reasons I'll tell you, Reed, that Minnesota kids, since I was playing, if you were a US guy, you have to be much better than the next guy.
Yep.
Canadian, European, that's a fact. And I'll challenge anybody, doesn't matter. I watched this game for a long time, but when Brock Nelson was taken 30th overall, that team got one hell of a player. I don't give a rip. And they were a lot smarter than a lot of other teams that picked in front of them, in my opinion. And that's just one guy. I can name 10 or 15 guys over the last 10 years. And it's just my opinion, but you have to be that much better. High school hockey to a Canadian scout is like playing peewee hockey.
Yeah.
And that's not being disrespectful. That's being honest. I've been around this game a long time and watched these guys. So these Minnesota kids and basically US kids, you got to be much better. And where you play is important. If you play in the OHL or the Western Hockey League, your value is here. When you play in the colleges, your value is here. If you play at the USA program, your value is here. If you play in high schools in Boston and Minnesota, your level is here. So you have to, somebody has to put you in a spot where they think they can get you. And that's why guys like TJ Oshie, late round guy, the defenseman from Eden Prairie,
Nick Letty.
I mean, all these guys.
Matt Niskanen.
Yeah, Niskanen from Virginia. So, I mean, those are just a handful of guys we're talking about that have been great NHL players, frontline players. And that's what bothered me a lot sometimes, but I keep kicking and biting. I'm like a little dog kicking at heels and stuff. I believe in these guys. I go to bat. That's just what I do. I try to do the best I can with them, with our organization, and I'm always chirping about somebody from Minnesota. And I've been wrong too, but I mean, it's been fun. It's been fun to do it.
Yeah, and that's kind of it's interesting because I've had lots of conversation with scouts. Pretty good friends with Trent Platt, so I talk with him a lot about scouting too. And a couple of things that he just always used to talk about is you as a scout, you have to be okay with being wrong once in a while and own when you're wrong. It's not anybody else's fault. You just have to agree that, hey, I made a decision on this guy. This is a guy that I slid into my draft list. I was wrong. I mean, that's the hardest part about it is you're trying to decide how good is this player going to be 5 years from now. Not how good he is right now. Can the kid play in the NHL right now? Not many of these guys that are coming in the first round are going to step in right away. How good are they going to be 5 years from now? And that's what you're trying to guess, but with obviously an educated guess, right?
Oh, I think so. I think in a lot of it, you just, like I said, if he's committed and he's a good leader and that stuff, if he's got that, he's got a great chance. If he's just a good player and I mean, there's a difference there. So that's what you got to determine. You can't measure the guy's heart. You don't know what he's going to be. I mean, you try to project what he's going to be, but Blake Wheeler played at Blake High School or Breck High School or something. He was the best player by a mile. Big, skate, best. And the knock on him, he wasn't very tough. Didn't compete very hard. Well, I'll tell you what, Blake Wheeler has turned out to be one of the best players to come out of the state of Minnesota and compete.
Yeah.
Played in the Olympic team. He's a leader in Winnipeg. He's a cap. Oh, and that's the stuff that you don't read. You can't read that.
No.
You got to say he's a great player. If he ends up doing this, he's going to be even better. Well, he ended up doing it, and there's teams that could take back the trades they made with him. So
some days you'd be willing to roll the dice on a guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, except when you're wrong. Yeah, like you said. I mean, if you can look in the mirror and say, I was wrong on this guy or that guy. I mean, who cares? You're gonna be wrong.
Yeah.
But some guys never wrong. They're never wrong.
Well, that's probably a guy that maybe doesn't last too long, 30 years in the organization, because the guys that are humble, that know that this is it's a fun job, it's a hard job, it's there's a lot of travel, but you got to be willing to take your lumps on a player here or there that you took a chance on.
Oh, yeah, you get laughed at, you get stomped on. Yeah, it's part of the deal. But you know what? You got to have thick skin.
Yep.
And you got to just. I mean, like I said, I've been around this game my whole life. I still learn every day. I learn tomorrow, the next day. I learn from everybody. And when you stop learning, I think it's time to go, because you can't know everything. You can't do it. You just got to go with your gut, trust it. Kids, parents, everybody. I mean, you're going to be wrong.
It's just like your golf swing. You can't tell me that you're not going to Eagle Ridge tomorrow and trying to fix what was not good today, right?
That's it.
You got to be learning
all the time.
You got to be learning.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Raj.
It's a fun way to look at it. I mean, and if you don't take yourself too serious, I love the game. I don't really. I play old timers in Coleraine because of COVID. I started playing.
I heard you were back on the ice.
So I mean, I went from disliking the game, playing it myself for 30 years, that I didn't miss a day. So
good for you.
Good for you. It's like a kid, a kid with a can.
Yeah.
So it's a great game. Yeah. It's a great sport. It's a great community. I don't know if I could say anything bad about it. I really don't know, except that I didn't like skating after I retired for a long time. I sure missed the boat on that one, but that's okay.
Hey, you're back. You're back. Better late than never.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to circle back to your playing days. So just some of the names as I was looking, through the database here. Frank Serratori, you played with. Craig Homelaw from Evelyn. The Carlson brothers, for those of you out there, AKA the Hanson brothers. Even Aaron Broughton from Roseau. Any stories or anything on them? I even noticed Aaron Broughton, Neil gets all the attention, gold medal winner, NCAA champion, Stanley Cup champion. He led your team in scoring in New Jersey one year.
Aaron Broughton was a great player. He was just brother. I mean, his brother was a great player, but Aaron Broughton in his own right, he was a really good player. I played with him. He was I don't know. He was like a hidden jewel, that guy. He was good. And I played with him for a couple of years in New Jersey. And then he just took off. I mean, he just took off. And he was a good NHL player. Boy.
Yeah, and then, like I said, Neil seems to get all the attention. I was stunned. Like, he led the team in scoring. I mean, I would not have known that if we wouldn't have done this interview. I was stunned.
And you got the Carlson brothers.
Did they ever have to bail you out there?
Oh, yeah. Big Jack. Yeah. Stevie and Jeff. What a great bunch of guys. And then the slap shot. Anybody that might mind who watches slap shot. But What people don't realize is that's what minor league hockey was. Any which way you cut it, they were all, I mean, they weren't paying for a lot of money, even in my time. It wasn't about the money. It was about playing. It was about having fun. It was about the fans. People don't realize, I mean, they see that, and they go, that was pretty close and hit the nail on the head. That show, it was a little overboard, but I'll tell you what, you talk about fighting and brawls, and I'll tell you, you don't want to get involved in that.
Well, let me, that segues into another question I had. So a guy that seemed to follow you around, and a guy I know, and I actually had a conversation with him, Murray Brumwell, when I met him 20 years ago. He said, guys didn't get paid like that, Roger, back in the 70s and 80s. And he said, I spent time in the minors, and it was completely different. So, I said, I know Murray, you know Murray. And like I said, it seemed like the more I looked, I mean, he played with you at the North Stars, and he played with you in some semi-pro. Then he's following you around all the way to New Jersey. He was everywhere you were. Do you have any good stories on him? And maybe just talk, just like you said, kind of the way it was maybe financially, because I think some of these young kids just think that, your generation, you signed the line and you punched your ticket.
Well, you're pretty close. We were working, the guys working in the iron mines in northern Minnesota were making more money than guys playing pro hockey at that time. There wasn't much money out there at all. And Murray was he was laid back. He was a good hockey player, but at that time you had to have a little bit of bite and bit, you know what I mean? Those are the kind of guys they wanted. They wanted guys who could fight and take care of themselves and take care of business for you. And he just some guys come around at the right time and the wrong time, and timing. But as far as hockey player, he belonged in the NHL. It was just a matter, did he have enough? And at that time, that's what they were looking for. But minor league players didn't make hardly anything at that time. In the 70s, I signed a contract in the 70s. I brought my signing bonus to my dad, Kelly, in Minnesota. I got like this. It's the most money I ever seen in my life, right? $5,000 was a lot of money in 1971. That was more money than my dad made. You know what my dad said to me? When are you going to finish college? I go, they're paying me this to play. So, I mean, that's the mentality, was to play. It wasn't about the money.
Right.
But at that time, I mean, I thought that was a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Just to play.
Sure.
And there were a lot of guys that played for less money, yearly salaries. They were still making $7,000 or $8,000 in minor leagues, compared to now. I mean, now there's a lot of guys that are bitter, older players that are bitter because these guys make so much money. But at the end of the day, who cares? Yeah. Those guys deserve it. I mean, for the amount of time they put in, the abuse they take, and the length. People don't realize how long those careers are in the NHL. They aren't very long.
How long the seasons are too now, right?
Yeah, but the years played are probably under 3. So,
right.
There's not all the superstars make all the money, and the other guys now would be making superstar money when I was playing. Yeah. I mean, way over and above. So for them, great for them. I think it's great. I think guys like Niskanen, who made a great living and stuff, when he had enough, he just said, I've had enough, he's going home. But he could do that. He had the money to do it, which is wonderful. When I didn't even have a job. I didn't know how to do anything. How do you go try to find a job when you got no skill? No, but everybody thinks it's funny, and you're right. It was but I interviewed for a couple of jobs after I got done playing, and this is just my story. And there's a lot of guys I know that end up bartending and stuff like that. But I walk into some of these places, and first thing they ask you, what kind of experience you got? Well, I go
in face-offs?
The only experience I got is I know how to use a Northland and a Christian Brother hockey stick. And the guys going, but really, it sounds like funny, but really it was the truth. So I'd sit in some of these interviews, and I'm trying to find a job to support my family. And these guys are asking me, so finally I told one guy, I said, I'll tell you what, you give me the job, I'll get the experience, and I'll be the best employee you have. And he looked at me like, I said, yeah, on the job training. He didn't go for that, but that was a good idea.
Well, it sounded like a good idea at the time, and
So,
the key to that one, I'm sure, was that the work ethic that you're ready to put into it, and that's something I think you learned from your playing days as well.
well, I think we learned it as a kid, you know, and growing up on the iron range, and, you know, you worked hard for what you got, and, you know, and nobody was gonna give you anything, and, you know, I still think there's those kids out there are the same. I mean, they don't expect anything. There are some that do, but I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta go to work, you go to work. That's the way I look at it. And I think a lot of the guys I played with, you know, had a tough time after because they didn't have any skill and they didn't, you know, and I feel bad. I know some of my buddies that are gone now that just couldn't get past not playing anymore. And that was a real hard thing to do with being penniless and no skill and no job. And I mean, so it was hard, but now I mean, just these kids that are making all this money now shouldn't forget about that, because there were a lot of guys before them that paid a heavy price to give them what they got. That's the way I look at it. It's like a soldier. That's the way I look at it. I mean, some of them went over and some of them came back. My buddies, some of them went and didn't come back. So, I mean, they paid the ultimate, and there's, you know, their stories along the way. But pro hockey is I think is great for these kids if they make it. Minor leaguers and all make good money. Have a good time. Have a good life. I think it's great. You know, I mean, you earned it. You earned it. It takes a lot of time and takes a lot of hard work. And I got, like I said, respect for the guys around the game that teach the game, that coach the game. I just think that the sacrifices everybody makes is worthwhile.
Absolutely.
You know, so
For sure.
Yeah, well, we're getting close to our time limit here. I know you got a golf team time. Anything else, Reed?
No, I really appreciate having you here, Anton. It's always fun to kind of dig into the knowledge of those that came before you, and got the utmost respect for the guys that put time in, that built the tradition around the area. I come from the Iron Range area. You come from the Iron Range area. You're proud to be where we're from, and this is kind of where those roots started. Obviously started before him as well, but I think that carries on, that legacy continues, and just appreciate having these conversations.
Any closing thoughts for any young people out there?
hey, put in the time. Nobody's gonna give you anything. You gotta earn it, and be a good citizen, be a good teammate, be a good leader, enjoy the game. It's only a game. Don't take it off. When it's over, it's over. Just play hard, enjoy it, have a good time.
Very well said. Very well said. All right, everyone. Well, you know, feel free to comment if you like on your best, you know, Mike Antonovich memory, best Mike Antonovich story. Maybe you can talk about his golf game. He just loves golfing, but, you know, feel free to go ahead and comment there. Of course, like and subscribe as always. For Reed Larson, I am Puka. Get out there and be your dream. You're tuned to the Tea with Ms. McGill show.